The morning sun rose over Fort Benning, casting long golden streaks across the sprawling parade grounds. The crisp air carried the faint scent of gunpowder and pine, mixing with the metallic tan of the armory nearby. Inside, a group of recruits and officers had gathered for routine weapons allocation. The usual clatter of rifles being cleaned and polished echoed against the walls, punctuated by low murmurs of chatter and laughter. But among the noise, a quiet figure moved with deliberate precision. Sergeant Claire Donovan, recently reassigned from a desk job in logistics, stepped forward with an air of calm authority that immediately drew glances. Her uniform was immaculate, not a crease or smudge in sight, and her polished boots tapped softly against the concrete. When she approached the weapons counter, her eyes locked on the rifles, lined up in perfect formation, her expression neutral, yet commanding. "I'd like to request a sniper rifle," she said, her voice steady, leaving no room for argument. For a moment, the room froze. Some soldiers blinked in surprise. A few instructors exchanged wary glances. Then, a ripple of laughter spread through the group. A younger recruit snorted, elbowing his friend. "Did she just ask for a sniper rifle? You gotta be kidding me." One of the more senior officers shook his head, muttering under his breath, "Logistics doesn't need rifles, much less snipers." Claire ignored the whispers, standing straight with her hands at her sides. Her posture radiated discipline, but it was her eyes that unnerved those who looked directly at her. They were sharp, calculating, and calm, a gaze that spoke of someone who had seen more than she should have, someone who demanded attention simply by being. An instructor leaned in, trying to maintain control over the chuckling recruits. "Sergeant Donovan, are you serious? That's not standard issue for someone in logistics." "I am serious," Claire replied, her tone even, devoid of hesitation. "I need it for field readiness." A ripple of skepticism passed through the room. Murmurs of disbelief and quiet mockery bubbled beneath the surface. "She's trying to play sniper," one recruit whispered to another. Another added, "Must be a desk jockey trying to be cool." Claire's face betrayed nothing. She didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't raise her voice. She simply repeated the request, calm as if stating the weather. The armory was small, its walls lined with racks of rifles, shotguns, and sidearms. A low hum of fluorescent lights overhead filled the silence between the bursts of laughter. It was a space where precision and order mattered, where mistakes could cost lives. And yet, here was a woman commanding attention, not through rank, but through an aura of undeniable authority. The senior instructor's eyes narrowed. There was something about her, a subtle, almost imperceptible quality that hinted she wasn't just another logistics officer. Something he had seen before, decades ago, when he'd encountered soldiers who weren't just competent, they were exceptional. And though he couldn't place it, he felt it instinctively. Claire turned and walked slowly toward a table, her boots clicking against the polished concrete. She moved with purpose, carefully inspecting the rifles as if each had a personality, a life of its own. Her hands hovered over the polished wood and cold metal, fingers brushing lightly over triggers and scopes. Each movement was deliberate, precise, almost ritualistic. She picked up one rifle, testing its balance, feeling the weight against her shoulder. A whisper of motion, a gentle adjustment, a practiced ease. The younger recruits watched, dumbfounded, as the seriousness in her demeanor deepened. Their laughter had faded into uneasy curiosity. One of the newer instructors finally asked, "Where did you learn to do that?" Claire's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Old habit," she said simply. And then she returned to polishing the rifle, her eyes scanning the room like a predator, calm but vigilant. The atmosphere shifted. The laughter was gone, replaced by a tense silence. Every eye in the room now watched her, trying to decipher her story, to the way she handled the weapon. The armory, once full of casual chatter and mockery, now felt charged, almost sacred. It was as if her presence alone demanded respect. Finally, the senior instructor stepped forward. "Sergeant Donovan, I'll have to check your clearance before approving this," he said, trying to maintain authority while betraying a flicker of doubt. "Sniper rifles aren't standard for your assignment." Claire nodded once. "Understood. But the request stands." He hesitated, then stepped aside, allowing her to continue. The other soldiers exchanged puzzled glances, whispers of uncertainty spreading like wildfire. No one dared mock her, now not openly, at least. There was something about Claire Donovan that made it clear. This was a woman who did not bluff, and she did not fail. As the recruits filed out, muttering quietly among themselves, Claire remained behind. Alone in the armory, she cleaned the rifle with methodical precision. Every bolt, every scope, every trigger was examined, adjusted, and polished until it gleamed. Her hands moved with a confidence born of countless hours of practice, a skill not found in manuals or standard training. Hours passed, yet she did not waver. The smell of oil and metal filled the room, mixing with the faint musk of her sweat as she worked tirelessly. Each movement was a reminder to herself. Precision mattered. Preparation mattered. Survival mattered. In that quiet, sacred space, Claire's mind replayed fragments of her past missions deployments that never appeared on her official record, operations so secret they were erased from existence. Each memory sharpened her focus, honed her instincts, and reminded her why she requested the sniper rifle. It wasn't for show. It was necessity. By the time the afternoon sun slanted through the high windows, casting long shadows across the armory floor, Claire stood and inspected the rifle one final time. It gleamed like a promise. She placed it gently back on the rack, straightened her uniform, and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Outside, recruits whispered to one another, still trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. A few officers shook their heads, unsure if they had underestimated her. But somewhere in the distance, unnoticed by most, one senior instructor muttered quietly to himself, "She's seen something, and she's dangerous." The seed of curiosity and unease had been planted. The laughter was gone, replaced by a tense awareness that Sergeant Claire Donovan was no ordinary officer. Somewhere, deep beneath the calm exterior, a storm of skill, experience, and precision awaited its moment, and those who mocked her would soon learn that nothing about her was ordinary. The next morning, Fort Benning buzzed with quiet speculation. Claire Donovan's request for a sniper rifle had not faded from memory overnight. It had grown, mutating into whispers that traveled from barracks to barracks. Recruits who had once laughed at her now exchanged uneasy glances when her name came up. "Have you seen her in the armory yesterday?" one asked, voice barely above a whisper. She handled that rifle like she was born with it. Others shook their heads, dismissing the tailies, but the seed of curiosity had been planted. Questions hung in the air. Who was this woman? Why did she command respect with nothing but a calm glance? And most importantly, why did she insist on a sniper rifle when logistics officers weren't even trained for long-range shooting? Claire walked through the camp with measured steps, carrying her usual clipboard, eyes scanning everything, missing nothing. She kept to herself mostly, exchanging polite nods with a few colleagues, but never engaging in idle chatter. Her demeanor was quiet yet magnetic, drawing the attention of anyone sensitive to subtle authority. She didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. The discipline she carried in her posture and gaze spoke volumes. The older instructors, who had served in multiple deployments, began to whisper among themselves. "She's seen combat," one said to another as Claire passed by. "I've never seen a logistics officer move like that." The other nodded slowly, a shiver of recognition creeping over him. There was a certain rhythm to her movements, a way of handling rifles, of walking, of observing, that spoke of training beyond the basic courses. It was instinct honed by experience, not theory. Meanwhile, Claire returned to the armory in the afternoon. Alone this time, she methodically cleaned the rifles again, but this session was different. She worked deliberately slower, her hands moving over the weapons like a sculptor over fine clay. She checked every bolt, every sight, every chamber, ensuring everything was perfect. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic. Each adjustment was a test of memory and instinct, a silent rehearsal of skills most soldiers only dreamt of mastering. A junior recruit entered the room, expecting to practice with one of the rifles, only to freeze at the sight of Claire. He had heard the rumors, of course, but seeing her work was something else entirely. The fluidity of her motions, the effortless command of every tool, the intense focus in her eyes, it was intimidating. Sergeant Donovan? He stammered, unsure whether he should even speak. She didn't look up. Check the cleaning procedure on the M24, she said quietly, her voice calm but authoritative. Every rifle you touch should be treated like it's live ammunition. Every bolt, every screw, every sight. Attention to detail isn't optional. The recruit swallowed hard and nodded, feeling both awe and fear. He realized quickly that her lessons were more than about rifles. They were about discipline, focus, and survival. Every instruction carried an underlying lesson. A mistake could be fatal. By evening, the story of her precision spread like wildfire. Recruits whispered in the mess hall, trying to make sense of the woman who had once been the butt of jokes. Some claimed they had seen her move during training exercises in ways that defied conventional understanding. Others insisted she had an almost supernatural ability to read wind, distance, and bullet trajectory. No one knew for certain. The air was thick with curiosity and unease. It wasn't just the recruits who were noticing. A visiting officer from a different base paused when he saw her quietly observing a live fire drill. He tilted his head, scanning her as she took notes on each shooter's performance. There was a precision in her gaze, an ability to measure subtle imperfections, to anticipate errors before they happened. He whispered to a colleague, "She's not just good, she's something else." Claire's mind, meanwhile, was elsewhere. Her quiet moments in the armory were when she allowed herself to think of the past. She remembered nights spent lying in wait on distant hills, waiting for a target to appear in the crosshairs, time stretching infinitely. She remembered the missions that never existed on official maps, the operations erased from history, the names that never made it into reports. Every memory, every skill, every scar all were ingrained in her hands, her eyes, her instinct. Yet she never flaunted it. The laughter, the mockery, even the whispered "oh it," meant nothing. She had learned long ago that the quiet ones, the patient ones, are the most dangerous. And patience was something she had in abundance. The following day, a group of recruits attempted to test her resolve. "Hey, logistics girl," one of them jeered. "How's your sniper rifle? Think you can hit anything?" A few snickers followed. Claire looked up slowly, her eyes locking with his. In that instant, the room seemed to contract. There was no anger, no flare of temper, only an intense, unreadable calm. "You will find that skill is earned, not given," she said softly. "And if you are serious enough, you might learn something." The laughter died quickly, not because she had yelled or threatened, but because her calm authority filled the room, replacing mockery with caution. It was subtle but unmistakable. She was not to be underestimated. By nightfall, the rumors had grown even more elaborate. Soldiers began comparing notes, trying to piece together a biography from fragments of observation. "She was in Europe," one insisted. "I heard she had deployments no one talks about." Another added, her rifle work. It's like she's part of a special unit or something. And some were beginning to remember an incident that had been mostly forgotten. The small tattoo visible on her wrist when she handled the rifle. A black Talon clutching a bullet casing. Only a few had seen it, and even fewer knew what it meant. Those who did exchange a look of unease and whispered, "She's Black Talon." For Claire, it was just another evening. She cleaned her rifle meticulously, then lined it carefully in its case. She reviewed every drill, every scenario, and every potential threat, silently preparing for what was coming. Because she knew her return to the base was not by chance. Something was brewing, something that would require all her skills, all her training, and all the patience she had cultivated over years of operations that no one would ever hear about. In the barracks, lights flickered on one by one as recruits whispered stories and theories, some embellishing, some truth, none complete. But one thing became clear. Sergeant Claire Donovan was no ordinary officer, and the days of mocking her request were over. She had commanded respect without even trying, simply by being herself, quiet, precise, and unyielding. And somewhere, in the shadows of the base, eyes followed her movements with a combination of curiosity and fear. Someone knew the name, someone recognized the mark, and someone understood that Black Talon had returned. The next week, Fort Benning's shooting range was alive with the sounds of rifles discharging, metal clanging, and commands barking over the wind. It was qualification day, the moment every soldier looked forward to with both anticipation and dread. Among the assembled recruits, Sergeant Claire Donovan's presence drew more attention than ever. She had become a subject of hushed whispers and skeptical glances, some admiring, some fearful. The young recruits, still recovering from their previous ridicule, were determined to challenge her. A few even joked aloud. "Come on, logistics girl," one sneered. "Let's see if your magic rifle can actually hit something beyond 50 meters. Laughter rippled through the group, though tension lingered in the air. Claire, as always, said nothing. She merely adjusted her uniform, checked the bolt on her M24, and began scanning the targets laid out on the distant hills. Her eyes narrowed, cold and calculating, as she assessed the wind, the shifting light, and the slight tremor in the grass at 1,200 meters, the farthest target available for this exercise. To everyone else, it was almost laughable. For Claire, it was routine. The younger recruits crowded around, trying to suppress their smirks, eager to witness what they assumed would be a failure. Even the instructors, curious despite themselves, edged closer. Claire lay prone on the sand, her rifle resting against the bipod, scope aligned with meticulous care. She exhaled slowly, the faintest trace of air moving through her nostrils, and measured the distance with practiced precision. Time seemed to slow. The chatter faded. The wind whispered across the range, carrying the scent of dust and gunpowder. Claire adjusted the scope's elevation, compensated for wind drift, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired. The shot rang out across the valley, echoing off the hills like thunder. When the dust cleared, the target at 1,200 meters had a single perfect hole in the bullseye. But that was not all. The bullet had punched cleanly through to the secondary target behind it, an impossible feat for standard training rifles under live wind conditions. The recruits froze, jaws slack, eyes wide. The laughter that had filled the range minutes ago evaporated instantly. One of the instructors, pale and shaking slightly, bent closer to inspect the shot grouping. "Impossible," he whispered under his breath. That's beyond any standard qualification." Claire didn't move. She reloaded the rifle with calm precision, as though the moment held no significance. Her eyes scanned the horizon, taking note of shadows, movement, and the subtle flutter of leaves in the breeze. She was a predator in plain sight, and everyone present was beginning to feel it. Then the visiting three-star general arrived. He had come to observe routine training, unaware that history was unfolding before him. He paused at the edge of the range, noting the unusual silence. His eyes fell on Claire, lying in the prone position with the rifle balanced perfectly, the scope glinting in the sunlight. Something inside him stirred. He had seen that stance before. That steady focus. That quiet authority. It was a style he recognized, one belonging not to a novice, but to a sniper trained in operations so secret that even he rarely discussed them. His brow furrowed, lips tightening as he stepped closer, careful not to draw attention to himself. "Sergeant Donovan," he called softly, though no one else heard him. "Is that you?" Claire's eyes flicked toward him, calm and unassuming, as if she had expected him all along. She adjusted the bipod slightly and aimed at a new target set farther out, 1,400 meters. A whisper of a smile touched her lips, but it was gone before anyone could notice. Another shot. Another bullseye. Another impossibility. The wind, the distance, the bullet drop, everything had been accounted for perfectly. No recoil misalignment. No deviation, nothing. The recruits stared, disbelief etched on their faces. Their instructor, still shaken, muttered, She's extraordinary." The general approached, stepping closer without drawing attention from the crowd. He crouched slightly, examining the rifle and the subtle marks of Claire's technique. Then he saw it, the small tattoo on her wrist, partially hidden under the sleeve. A black Talon clutching a bullet casing. His breath caught. Recognition hit him like a thunderclap. That symbol was known to only a few in the highest levels of the military. Black Talon, a classified sniper program, officially erased from existence. Its operatives legendary for precision, discretion, and lethality. And here she was, right in front of him. He whispered her coding name under his breath. Black Talon. The room seemed to shift subtly. The recruits continued to stare, utterly confused, unable to comprehend why their mockery had vanished so suddenly. But the general's reaction told a story the recruits would never fully understand. The woman they had laughed at, dismissed, was a legend, a force of skill that transcended the standard rules of training and reality. Claire finished her drills and began packing the rifle, methodical as ever. The general waited, eyes fixed on her, studying her movements, noting every detail. He didn't speak yet. There was no need. He understood. He had seen her in action before, in missions that were classified, in operations that had never been acknowledged. Finally, when the range had emptied of recruits and the echoes of gunfire faded, he approached her quietly. "Sergeant Donovan," he said softly, almost reverently, "follow me, now." The other officers and soldiers watched in stunned silence. They had mocked her days ago, but now they were unsure what they were witnessing. Something had changed, though none of them could articulate it. Claire's quiet composure, her precision, her unwavering focus, it all screamed experience, training, and lethal capability. As she followed the general to a private office, she glanced over her shoulder briefly at the range. The recruits were still staring, whispering among themselves, trying to piece together what had just occurred. The reality was impossible to convey in words. They had just seen a master at work, someone who could turn laughter into awe with a single pull of a trigger. Inside the office, the general closed the door and locked it. His face was serious, eyes scanning Claire with a mixture of recognition and concern. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Not now. Not like this." Claire didn't respond. She simply stood, hands clasped behind her back, waiting. She had returned to the base for a reason, and she intended to see it through. The general studied her for a long moment, then leaned closer, lowering his voice further. He saw the tattoo on her wrist again. Black Talon, he whispered. The words seemed to carry a weight, a recognition of history, of danger, and of capability that the ordinary soldiers could never understand. Claire nodded ever so slightly. "It's time," she said, her voice calm, precise. "They're waiting." The general exhaled slowly, tension coiling in his shoulders. He had known the stories, the legends, and yet seeing her in action brought it into sharp reality. The woman who had once been mocked for asking a rifle was far beyond the comprehension of those around her. Outside the office, the range lay silent. The recruits continued to whisper, unsure whether to admire, fear, or forget what they had witnessed. Claire Donovan had demonstrated her skill, but it was more than that. She had announced, without speaking, that she was not someone to be underestimated. She had earned their attention, their respect, and something more, the acknowledgement of her true identity. For those who knew the Cody name, for those who had trained in shadows, the revelation was simple yet terrifying. Black Talon had returned, and the world, or at least this corner of the military, would never be the same. The door clicked shut behind them, muffling the distant sounds of rifles and wind on the range. Inside the general's private office, the air felt heavier, almost charged, as if the room itself recognized the gravity of the moment. Claire Donovan stood at attention, calm, controlled, and utterly composed. She placed her hands behind her back, fingers interlaced, and regarded the general with steady eyes. She knew why he had called her here, and she was ready. The general paced slowly, as if trying to gather his thoughts, his eyes never leaving hers. He had just witnessed something extraordinary, something impossible by normal military standards. A single shot at 1,200 meters, clean through two targets, with wind, gravity, and distance all accounted for perfectly. Yet it wasn't only her skill that unsettled him. It was the subtle aura of experience that surrounded her, the quiet confidence of someone who had survived more than any file could ever reveal. Finally, he stopped pacing and leaned against the edge of his desk, lowering his voice. "Sergeant Donovan." "The name Black Talon. That tattoo," he said, gesturing subtly to her wrist. "I thought it was a legend. A code name from a program that doesn't exist anymore. And yet?" His voice trailed, uncertainty breaking through the normally rigid tone of command. Claire followed his gesture and glanced down at her wrist. The black talon gripping the bullet casing was small, almost understated, but it carried decades of history. Every line of ink represented missions carried out in secrecy, operations so classified they had been erased from maps and files. Her calm expression did not waver. The tattoo was both a reminder and a warning. "Yes," she said softly. "Black Talon, that's who I am." The general's eyes widened slightly. He had trained soldiers, observed snipers, and led covert units in operations too sensitive to discuss openly. And yet, standing in front of him, was someone who surpassed even the legends he had been told about. He could see it in her posture, the way she handled her weapon, the precise rhythm of her movements. "I thought they were gone, retired, deactivated. You." He paused, swallowing, struggling to find the words. "I was never gone," Claire replied. Her voice was calm, steady, but carried the weight of countless missions. "I've been waiting for the right moment." The general stepped closer, his gaze now examining her eyes, searching for any hint of vulnerability or hesitation. He found none. "Why return now?" he asked. "You know this base isn't what it once was. You're exposing yourself." Claire's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly. "I have my reasons. Orders, intelligence. Threats that don't wait for bureaucracy. And the right target won't present itself twice." He nodded slowly, finally understanding the depth of her words. The Black Talon program had trained snipers not just to shoot, but to survive impossible scenarios, to operate alone behind enemy lines, and to execute missions that were deemed unattainable. Claire's record, as far as the official files showed, was thin, a logistics officer transferred from desk duty, but in reality, she was one of the most lethal snipers the military had ever produced. The general moved to his secure terminal, fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. A hidden archive accessed, revealing files that were otherwise invisible to everyone on base. Each document, each mission report, each declassified photo flickered onto the screen. Operations in Eastern Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, everyone meticulously documented in secret channels. 43 confirmed long-range eliminations, operations executed without civilian collateral, missions that changed the course of conflicts without anyone outside the chain of command ever knowing. He gestured to the screen, watching Claire's face for any reaction. There was none. She merely observed, composed as ever, her hands still folded behind her back. The general swallowed hard. All of these. It's impossible for a logistics officer to have done any of this, he said quietly. And yet, here you are. Claire's eyes remained steady. Logistics is my cover. Observation, planning, precision, that's the real mission. And the Black Talon designation doesn't retire someone just because the files say so. The general studied the tattoo again. The Black Talon itself wasn't just ink. It was history, legacy, and identity. Only those who had completed the Black Talon program bore the mark. Only those who had proven themselves in real combat, under circumstances that would have broken ordinary soldiers, survived to wear it. And Claire Donovan had earned it, in blood, sweat, and death. A silence fell between them, heavy and contemplative. Outside, the distant murmur of recruits and instructors continued, unaware of the revelation unfolding behind the office doors. Inside, two people understood the truth. The woman standing before the general was not simply returning to base. She was preparing for a mission that few could comprehend, one that required skill, patience, and lethal precision. Finally, the general broke the silence. You know they'll be watching you, he said. Not the recruits. They don't understand. But intelligence, field command. Everyone who knows the legend will be aware. They'll try to use you, and they'll try to test you. Are you prepared for that? Claire nodded once. I've been ready. The moment doesn't wait for preparation. It comes, and you respond. That's the Black Talon way. He let out a long breath, realizing the gravity of what he was witnessing. And the target? He asked. Why now? She hesitated for the briefest second, then spoke. A network has resurfaced. A cell we thought eliminated. It's called Vulture's Gate. They've grown bolder, attacking outposts, killing civilians, spreading fear. It's time to act. And I'm the only one who can reach them before they vanish again. The general nodded slowly. He knew the name, the history, the danger, and he understood why she had been pulled back into active operations. He had heard rumors that the Black Talon operatives were untraceable, capable of infiltrating hostile territory without leaving a single mark. He had seen the devastation they could deliver when authorized, but witnessing Claire in person, seeing her skill and composure, was a revelation he could never have prepared for. You'll have the resources, he said finally. But discretion is key. No one outside this office can know the full story, not yet. And the recruits? They must never see the full extent of your capability until it's necessary. Claire inclined her head, acknowledging the plan. She had long worked in shadows, unseen and unrecorded. Public recognition was never part of her mission. Efficiency and precision were her only currency. The general glanced at the window overlooking the training range, where a few recruits lingered, still whispering about her performance. He shook his head slowly. They mocked you once, he said softly. They won't make that mistake again. A faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed Claire's lips. They don't need to. They'll learn when it matters. The general looked back at the secure screen, reviewing her past missions again, and realized fully what he was dealing with. Not just a soldier, not just a sniper, but a weapon in human form. Every mission, every shot, every operation had been executed with perfection. She had survived situations where others would have failed, and she had returned to base not for glory, but because the world still needed her unique skills. Claire's calm authority and lethal precision were unmistakable. She moved with a rhythm that only experience could create. The office felt charged, almost alive, as if it acknowledged the presence of a true legend. Outside, the recruits continued their routines, blissfully unaware of the storm waiting to unfold. The general took a final step back, letting her process the information and settle into her mission readiness. Prepare yourself, he said quietly. When the call comes, there will be no second chances. Claire nodded. She had been waiting for this for years, waiting for the opportunity to re-enter the field, to strike with the skill only the Black Talon program could produce. Every detail mattered. Every shot counted. And she knew that soon, her reputation would move from whispers to undeniable reality. For now, though, she remained quiet, poised, and ready. The mark on her wrist was more than a tattoo. It was a legacy, a promise, and a warning. Black Talon had returned, and nothing would stop her from completing the mission that awaited. The room fell silent, heavy with unspoken acknowledgement. Outside, the base continued its routines, oblivious to the fact that a legend walked among them. Claire Donovan, the Black Talon, had returned to change the course of events that no ordinary soldier could ever handle. And in the shadows of classified operations and whispered histories, her next move would be decisive, precise, and unstoppable. The secure office was dimly lit, the glow from the terminal casting sharp angles across Claire Donovan's calm face. Outside, the base continued its routines, oblivious to the unfolding revelations inside. The general had left the door locked, knowing full well that nothing spoken here could ever be made public. What they were about to discuss existed in the shadows, classified, dangerous, and deadly. Claire stood at attention, hands clasped behind her back. Her focus was absolute, her breathing even betraying no hint of anticipation. She had faced life-or-death scenarios, countless times before missions erased from official records, operations so secret that her own chain of command sometimes didn't know her location. Yet even now, the weight of what she was about to hear brought a familiar thrill. The general tapped the terminal, and a series of encrypted files appeared on the screen. Operation dossiers, surveillance images, intercepted communications, and threat assessments filled the room in rapid succession. Claire's eyes scanned them, absorbing every detail without haste, every movement precise, calculated, efficient. These files, the general began, his voice low, detail the re-emergence of a network we thought neutralized years ago. Vulture's Gate. They've resurfaced with more sophistication than ever. Intelligence suggests multiple outposts, arms caches, and a chain of command capable of evading traditional surveillance. Claire nodded, letting the words settle. Her mind raced, calculating possible insertion points, sniper positions, exfil routes. The files were thorough, but even the most detailed reports had blind spots. That was where her experience mattered, the instinct honed from years of operating in shadows, in missions where no map, no briefing, no backup existed. The general continued, pulling up an encrypted dossier. They've already struck 3 locations in northern Syria. Casualties are high, and civilian presence is significant. Conventional forces can't engage without risking escalation. That's why we're assigning you. You're the only operative with the training, discretion, and lethality required to neutralize this cell before it expands further. Claire's eyes flicked to the screen, studying maps, photographs of operatives, and building schematics. Every angle, every potential vantage point, every line of sight was noted. Her mind was already running simulations, calculating wind speeds, distances, and bullet trajectories, everything she would need once the operation commenced. "I'll need access to specialized equipment," Claire said quietly. "Recon drones, advanced optics, encrypted comms. And my rifle. Standard issue won't suffice." The general nodded. "Already arranged. Your weapon has been calibrated for long-range engagement in desert terrain. We've updated it with a custom scope, reinforced barrel, and optimized ammunition. The team has prepared everything you'll need. The problem," he paused, "is timing. Vulture's Gate is mobile, unpredictable. You'll have limited windows to act, and extraction won't be guaranteed." Claire's expression remained neutral, though a faint tightening at her jaw suggested she was processing every variable. Risk was nothing new. Death had become a familiar companion over the years. But what she thrived on was precision, the ability to tilt the odds in her favor when all others would fail. The general leaned closer, lowering his voice further. "You understand, Donovan. This mission isn't just dangerous. It's delicate. One wrong shot, one miscalculation, and it could trigger international fallout. The intelligence community, field command, even NATO liaison units, they'll be watching, quietly, assessing your every move." "I understand," Claire replied. Her voice was calm, unwavering, but carried an edge of determination. "Discretion is my standard. Impact is my measure. Nothing more, nothing less." The general studied her carefully, aware that these words were not empty bravado. Black Talon operatives were chosen for exactly this mindset. They could operate alone, unseen, unheard, and strike decisively. Claire's composure confirmed what he already suspected: she was ready. He gestured to a secure drawer, unlocking it with a keycard and entering a combination. Inside lay a case identical to the one she had trained with days ago. She opened it slowly, reverently. Inside rested her custom M24 sniper rifle, polished to perfection, fitted with advanced optics, and calibrated for extreme long-range engagement. Alongside it lay ammunition, cleaning tools, and a lightweight suppressor. Every component had been meticulously prepared, ready for deployment. Claire lifted the rifle carefully, running her fingers along the stock, testing the balance. She had used this weapon before, in training and in shadowed operations where a single shot could save or end a life. Every scratch, every adjustment, told a story of missions past. She lowered the scope to her eye, aligning it with the distant window frame. A faint smile touched her lips. It was as if she were greeting an old friend. The general continued briefing, detailing known locations of the Vulture's Gate operatives, highlighting escape routes, guard rotations, and areas of civilian activity. Claire absorbed each fact, translating them into tactical possibilities. She imagined herself on the ridges, surveying the terrain, anticipating each movement of the enemy, plotting her shots, and calculating every angle before it ever happened. "You'll be deploying alone at first," the general said, "to establish overwatch positions and eliminate key targets. Support units will only engage once the initial threat is neutralized. Communication will be limited, satellite channels are monitored. You'll need to move quietly and efficiently." Claire nodded. She had thrived in these conditions before. Isolation, silence, patience, these were her allies. The mission required perfection, and imperfection was a luxury she could not afford. The general leaned back, studying her one last time. "I don't need to remind you. If you fail, the repercussions extend far beyond personal risk. Every operative, every innocent life, every mission we've executed to this point could unravel. Do you understand? I understand, Claire said, voice steady. No hesitation, no doubt. Only resolve. He exhaled slowly. Then you're cleared for deployment. Recon drones will monitor your insertion. Supplies and comms will be ready. Your extraction window is limited. Do not wait for confirmation if engagement becomes critical. Adapt, improvise, and execute. That is all. Claire nodded, silently committing the final instructions to memory. Every detail mattered. The exact coordinates, wind speeds, time of day, vantage points, and potential contingencies. She was methodical because mistakes were unforgiving. As she prepared to leave the office, the general added, almost as an afterthought, one more thing. His eyes studied her for any reaction. The recruits, the others, they mocked you, didn't they? Claire's expression remained calm. Let them talk. They'll never understand until it matters. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Good, they don't need to. Outside the office, the base continued in oblivion. Recruits walked past, rifles slung over their shoulders, unaware of the lethal preparation taking place mere steps away. Claire moved through the corridors with quiet precision, her mind already mapping the terrain of the mission ahead. Every sound, every shadow, every detail registered in her mind. Back in her temporary quarters, she assembled her gear, checking and rechecking every component. Her rifle was cleaned, oiled, and balanced. Ammunition was meticulously organized. Her tactical map lay open on the table, pins marking targets, escape routes, and observation points. She visualized each step, each shot, each contingency with practiced intensity. Hours passed in this meticulous preparation. Claire reviewed communications protocols, ensuring secure lines. She ran mental simulations of wind patterns, distances, and shot trajectories. Each variable was accounted for, each scenario rehearsed in her mind with perfect precision. When finally she lay down to rest, it was only for a brief moment. Sleep was unnecessary. Focus, patience, and readiness were her allies now. The mission was approaching, and every second mattered. She had returned for a purpose, and the Black Talon legacy demanded execution without error. Outside, the moon rose over Fort Benning, casting a pale silver light across the base. Shadows stretched long and silent, mirroring the anticipation that hung in the air. Somewhere beyond the walls, Vulture's Gate continued its operations, unaware that a hunter had returned. Claire Donovan, Black Talon, was ready. The following morning, the sun rose over Fort Benning, washing the base in pale gold. The recruits, still buzzing with speculation about Sergeant Claire Donovan's unbelievable performance, were gathered on the training field. There was a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and quiet fear in their eyes. They had witnessed her precision on the range, the impossible shot at 1,200 meters, and yet their minds struggled to reconcile the calm logistics officer with the deadly sniper they now knew her to be. Claire stood before them, clipboard in hand, her posture calm but commanding. The laughter and mockery from days ago were gone. In their place was a tense, almost reverential silence. Even the instructors, who had seen countless soldiers come and go, observed her closely, recognizing a mastery few could claim. Listen carefully, she said, voice steady, cutting through the quiet. What you saw on the range is not a fluke. Every shot, every decision, every adjustment has a reason. Discipline, patience, and observation are not optional, they are survival. A young recruit raised his hand nervously. Sergeant Donovan. How did you do it? That shot? At 1,200 meters. His voice trailed, disbelief still evident. Claire's eyes met his, calm and unwavering. You don't calculate one shot with math alone. You observe. You anticipate. You account for variables others ignore. Wind, humidity, distance, even the slight movement of a leaf, everything matters. And you practice. Until it becomes instinct, not thought. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. None had heard a lecture like this before. Her words weren't theoretical. They carried the weight of lived experience. Some even whispered among themselves, quietly trying to gauge if she was exaggerating. Today, Claire continued, you'll begin learning precision and patience. And yes, some of you may think you know more than you do. You're about to learn humility. The training field was expansive, with targets set at varying distances. Some were standard, some cleverly disguised simulate real-world conditions. Claire moved among the recruits, observing their stances, grips, and sight alignment. Her eyes, trained for minute imperfections, caught every flaw instantly. "You're too tense," she said to one young recruit, placing her hands lightly on his shoulders to adjust his posture. "Relax. Confidence doesn't come from force. It comes from control. Control your body, control your mind, control your focus. Only then will you control the outcome." Another recruit tried to mimic her instructions on his own, adjusting his rifle, but Claire shook her head. "Incorrect. You must feel the rifle, not fight it. The rifle is an extension of your instincts. If your mind doubts, the rifle falters. If your body hesitates, the bullet misses." She walked slowly among them, demonstrating techniques in real time. Every movement, every adjustment was precise, almost ritualistic. When she crouched into a prone position and aligned her scope with a distant target, it was poetry in motion, efficient, deliberate, lethal. The recruits watched, transfixed. What had once been a woman they mocked was now a teacher, a predator, and a legend all at once. Hours passed as she drilled them on observation and marksmanship fundamentals. She taught them to read the environment, the subtle ripple of heat waves, the slight sway of foliage, the whisper of wind. She emphasized patience above all else. "If you rush," she said, voice steady, "you will fail. Timing is everything. One wrong move, one early shot, and you compromise not just yourself, but the mission." By midday, a small circle of recruits had gathered around her, their skepticism slowly giving way to awe. Claire's calm precision, her ability to translate decades of hidden combat experience into actionable instruction, was unlike anything they had seen. Some tried to argue, still holding on to doubts. "But Sergeant Donovan, that's not how we were taught," she interrupted with a subtle gesture, her hand rising slightly, not in anger but in command. "Then unlearn it. What you were taught is theory. What I teach is reality. One mistake can cost lives. You will follow my method or fail. The choice is yours." Even the instructors remained quiet. They had learned the hard way that trying to argue with Claire Donovan was futile. Her calm authority was absolute, uncheckable, and founded on decades of skill that no one at the base could challenge. After the morning session, she gathered the recruits for a break. Some spoke in hushed tones, still trying to reconcile their impressions. One young soldier muttered to another, She's something else. That shot yesterday. There's no way that was just luck." Claire listened from a distance, silently observing. She didn't need to assert dominance. The work she had done, the lessons she had demonstrated, spoke for her. Yet, she knew this was just the beginning. The recruits were being prepared for what lay ahead, but more importantly, they were being prepared to witness what Black Talon truly represented. By afternoon, the session shifted to long-range drills. Claire positioned the recruits in simulated Overwatch scenarios, requiring them to observe, calculate, and fire with precision. Her instructions were meticulous. Adjust for wind. Compensate for distance. Consider bullet drop. Anticipate movement. Every shot has consequences. Make them count. Some recruits struggled, frustration evident in furrowed brows and trembling hands. Claire moved silently among them, correcting posture, alignment, and breathing. She didn't scold. She guided, demonstrating through example and subtle correction. One by one, they began to understand the patience, the focus, and the discipline required to wield precision as she did. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the field, Claire stood on a slight ridge overlooking the recruits. She had them observe a final drill, hitting targets placed beyond the horizon line, partially obscured by foliage. The wind picked up slightly, rustling leaves, and the recruits hesitated, unsure of how to account for such variables. Claire lowered herself into position, aimed carefully, and fired. A single shot rang out. The target, partially hidden behind a tree, was hit dead center. The sound of impact echoed across the field. The recruits froze, stunned. Murmurs spread quickly. There was no doubt in anyone's mind now. "You see," she said calmly, standing once more, "precision is not about strength. It's not about luck. It's about understanding, observation, patience, control. If you master these, you can hit any target, under any condition, at any distance." For the recruits, the lesson was clear. They had begun the day skeptical, mocking, and doubtful. They had ended it in awe, their understanding of skill and discipline forever altered. Claire Donovan had not only proven herself, but had begun to transform them, teaching by example and reinforcing the lethal legacy of Black Talon. As night fell over Fort Benning, Claire carefully stored her rifle, checking every component once more. The field lay silent, illuminated only by the faint glow of the moon and distant lights of the base. The recruits had left, whispering among themselves, still processing what they had witnessed. Some had tried to maintain their bravado, but the reality was undeniable. The woman they had mocked, dismissed, and underestimated was a master in every sense of the word. Claire sat quietly for a moment, reviewing the day's lessons in her mind. Tomorrow, the training would continue, but a new element would be introduced: real-world simulations, mission planning, and the first steps toward engagement with Vulture's Gate. Every detail mattered. Every recruit mattered. Every moment was preparation for the mission that awaited beyond the base, in hostile territory where hesitation could mean death. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere beyond the base, Vulture's Gate moved, unaware that a legend had returned, that Black Talon was active once more, and that patience, precision, and lethal skill were quietly being taught to those who had once doubted her. Claire Donovan, calm, focused, and deadly, had begun the final preparations. And soon, the recruits would witness not only her skill, but the unstoppable force that Black Talon represented, a silent shadow in the battlefield, precise, patient, and lethal beyond comprehension. The training field, now empty, lay silent under the moonlight. But the lessons had been delivered. The doubters had been silenced. The recruits had been transformed. And Black Talon had begun her final ascent, preparing to strike where it mattered most. The night was dark and heavy as Claire Donovan prepared for deployment. The base was quiet, most soldiers sleeping or off duty, unaware that a mission of lethal importance was unfolding in real time. She stood alone in the armory, double-checking her gear and her rifle, ensuring every piece of equipment was in perfect condition. The calm rhythm of her preparations belied the tension outside tonight. She would move from controlled training to real-world danger. The insertion team, a small unit of trusted operatives, waited on the outskirts of the base. Unlike traditional convoys, the deployment was silent, calculated, and untraceable. Claire moved with them, a shadow among shadows, her rifle strapped securely and every step deliberate. Even in the darkness, her movements radiated control, experience, and lethal precision. As they approached the drop-off point, the general's voice came over the encrypted comms, calm but firm. Black Talon, insertion point is secure. Coordinates uploaded. Your window is limited. Act swiftly. Act quietly. Extraction team will be 2 clicks west, near the ridge. Claire acknowledged the command with a simple nod, her mind already processing the terrain, enemy positions, and potential hazards. Every calculation mattered. Wind patterns, bullet trajectory, enemy patrols, civilian presence. Her training, her instincts, and her years in the field converged in a single razor-sharp focus. The helicopter touched down silently, blades slicing. The night air with muted precision, thanks to advanced technology. Claire disembarked first, moving with the grace and certainty of a predator. She scanned the landscape, noting shadowed windows, distant patrol lights, and uneven terrain. Every step was measured, deliberate, silent. This was the environment where Black Talon thrived, a world where hesitation could mean death, and patience could mean survival. The first phase was observation. Claire set up a temporary overwatch position on a ridgeline overlooking the suspected Vulture's Gate base. She adjusted her rifle, calibrated the scope for distance and wind, and began scanning. Hours passed in near silence. Every movement below was catalogued, every sound analyzed. Enemy operatives moved with precision, unaware of the predator watching from above. Then, the first opportunity presented itself. 2 high-value targets emerged from a building, stepping into the moonlight. Claire assessed the angles, calculated bullet drop, compensated for wind, and waited for the perfect moment. Her breathing was controlled, steady, every muscle attuned to the task. 1 shot. Dead center. Both targets fell instantly. The precision was surgical. No noise beyond the faint whisper of the suppressed round. Vulture's Gate had not yet realized their security had been breached. The next few hours were a blur of observation, movement, and precise engagement. Claire eliminated threats systematically. Each action deliberate, each shot calculated to avoid civilian presence. The operatives below were skilled, but they were unprepared for the accuracy and patience of Black Talon. Every engagement reinforced her reputation as a ghost in the night, a silent force capable of changing the balance of a battle before anyone knew it had begun. During a brief lull, Claire used a compact drone to survey additional targets, analyzing patrol routes, guard rotations, and potential choke points. She discovered a secondary weapons cache and a communication hub. Neutralizing them would disrupt Vulture's Gate's operations significantly. The decision was tactical strike, then exfiltrate or continue systematic elimination. Patience dictated restraint. She opted for precision strikes. 1 by 1, she eliminated guards silently, moved between overwatch points, and maintained constant situational awareness. At one moment, a patrol came dangerously close to her position. Claire froze, blending seamlessly with the environment. She calculated their speed, distance, and trajectory of movement. Only when they passed did she breathe again. A single misstep could have ended the mission. Hours later, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Claire approached the communication hub. Using suppressed charges and expert timing, she destroyed equipment critical to Vulture's Gate operations, cutting off their ability to coordinate attacks. Each action was deliberate, with minimal noise and maximum effect. The enemy was blindsided, unaware that one operative had dismantled their capabilities without a single direct confrontation. As she prepared for exfiltration, Claire reviewed. Her tally high-value targets neutralized, operations disrupted, civilians unharmed, and critical intelligence secured. Extraction point was confirmed via encrypted comms. She moved toward the ridge, maintaining cover, alert for patrols and potential ambushes. Every step was precise, calculated, and silent. The extraction team awaited, ready to whisk her from the battlefield. Claire's mission was a success, but she didn't linger in celebration. The field was still hostile, and overconfidence was dangerous. She scanned the perimeter one last time, eyes catching the smallest movement a patrol, too close to her exit path. She calculated trajectory, distance, and timing, then waited. When the moment was right, she moved, silent and untraceable, reaching the extraction point without detection. Once aboard the helicopter, Claire allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. The landscape below was dotted with smoke and shadows, a testament to the disruption she had wrought. Yet there was no pride, only focus. Another mission awaited, and the world beyond the base remained unaware of the lethal precision at work. Back at Fort Benning, the general awaited updates via encrypted comms. The mission was a resounding success, executed with surgical precision. High-value targets eliminated, operations disrupted, and intelligence secured. Claire Donovan had once again demonstrated why Black Talon was a name whispered in reverence and fear. The helicopter touched down silently. Claire disembarked, immediately moving to debrief with the general. No fanfare, no recognition, only operational analysis. Every detail mattered: what went right, what could have gone wrong, and how future operations could be improved. The general looked at her, expression unreadable. "You've done it again," he said quietly. "But the threat is not completely neutralized. Vulture's Gate will recover, adapt, and strike elsewhere. You know that." Claire nodded. "I understand." This was just phase 1. Observation, elimination, disruption. The next step requires patience, timing, and more precision. They won't know what hit them until it's too late. Her calm authority left the general momentarily speechless. He had commanded units in combat, directed special operations, and faced threats that seemed insurmountable. Yet witnessing Claire Donovan and action-seeing Black Talon execute a mission with surgical efficiency and no margin for error was a reminder that some legends existed beyond ordinary comprehension. As the sun rose fully, washing Fort Benning in warm light, Claire prepared for the next phase. Her rifle was checked, her gear maintained, her mind sharp. The mission was far from over, but she had set the tone. Precision, patience, and lethal efficiency were her allies. Outside, the world remained unaware. Recruits moved about the base, still whispering about the impossible shots, and the calm logistics officer turned ghostly predator. Claire Donovan had returned, and Black Talon's legacy continued silent, deadly, and unstoppable. She looked at the horizon, eyes narrowing slightly. Vulture's Gate had been disrupted, but the network still lived. And Black Talon would ensure that every threat was met with the precision and patience that defined her. The battlefield was silent for now, but the storm had only begun. Claire Donovan, lethal, precise, and unwavering, was ready. Night had fallen again over the rugged terrain where Vulture's Gate operated. Claire Donovan crouched atop a rocky ridge, her body pressed low against the earth. The moonlight glinted faintly off the scope of her M24 sniper rifle, perfectly aligned and ready. Below, the enemy camp lay sprawled like a nest of vipers, unaware that their world was about to collapse. Every movement, every shadow, every sound was catalogued in Claire's mind. She knew the terrain as if it were a chessboard, every piece already plotted, every outcome anticipated. The mission's earlier phases had been executed flawlessly, high-value operatives eliminated, communication hubs destroyed, supply caches neutralized. But tonight, Claire faced the final phase, eliminating the core, leadership of Vulture's Gate, and securing intelligence that would dismantle the network entirely. The success of this operation would not only neutralize the immediate threat, but prevent future attacks on civilians and allied forces. Claire observed the camp through her scope. There were 5 primary targets moving in a small cluster near the command tent. They laughed, oblivious to the predator watching them. Timing was crucial. A single misfire could alert the others, jeopardizing the entire mission. Patience was her ally, as always. She exhaled slowly, letting every muscle relax, her breathing in perfect rhythm with the night. She adjusted her scope to account for wind drift, distance, and elevation. Calculated the bullet drop with meticulous care. 0 hesitation, 0 doubt. 1 shot could eliminate the first target silently. 2 more precise shots would take out the next 2. Then the remaining leaders could be neutralized sequentially, leaving chaos within the enemy ranks without harming innocent personnel. She took her first shot. The suppressed rifle whispered through the night. The first high-value operative fell silently, collapsing to the ground with no warning. The second shot followed moments later, then the third. The enemy operatives remained oblivious, thinking the sounds were distant echoes of the terrain. Claire moved quickly, but silently to her next vantage point, relocating to maintain stealth while preparing to strike the remaining targets. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to avoid detection. Even the faintest sound could betray her, but her experience allowed her to merge with the environment, a shadow among shadows. From the new position, she assessed the final 2 operatives. They were close, communicating in hushed tones, unaware that their fate had been sealed. Claire's finger rested lightly on the trigger, her mind running calculations in microseconds distance, wind, breathing pattern, pulse. She waited for the perfect moment, as always. The shots rang out 2 perfectly timed rounds, hitting their marks with lethal precision. Both operatives fell silently, the threat neutralized before they even had a chance to react. Claire exhaled, her mission nearing completion, yet she remained hyper-aware, scanning the perimeter for unexpected threats or reinforcements. Now came the most critical task, securing intelligence from the command tent. She approached cautiously, staying low, blending with the darkness. The tent flap was partially open, revealing documents, laptops, and hard drives. Claire moved inside silently, her movements methodical, her eyes scanning for traps or surveillance devices. She quickly gathered the necessary intelligence, securing it in a compact case. Every file, every record, every shred of information could prevent future attacks. She memorized key data points, cross-referencing them with her mental map of the organization. It was not enough to eliminate the leadership. The network had to be dismantled completely. Claire exited the tent, carefully retracing her steps to avoid detection. The camp was still in disarray, operatives lying unconscious or eliminated, communications cut off. She moved to the extraction point, where a small team waited to evacuate her. Every detail had been planned, every contingency accounted for. As she reached the ridge overlooking the extraction zone, she paused, scanning the area one final time. Movement flickered in the shadows, reinforcements attempting to reach the camp. Claire calculated distances, trajectories, and timing. A single, precise shot would deter them without alerting the others or causing unnecessary casualties. The rifle fired once more, a suppressed round striking the nearest threat, halting their advance. The reinforcements scattered, unsure of what had struck them. Claire used the moment to exfiltrate, moving swiftly toward the waiting extraction team. Every step, every decision, had been executed with the precision and patience that defined Black Talon. The helicopter lifted silently, carrying her away from the operation zone. Below, Vulture's Gate lay crippled, their command structure destroyed, intelligence secured. Claire watched the landscape recede, knowing that her mission had been a success, not through brute force, but through skill, patience, and lethal precision. Back at Fort Benning, she delivered the secured intelligence directly to the general. He examined the files, his expression a mixture of relief and awe. "You've done it," he said quietly. "Every high-value target eliminated, every record secured. Vulture's Gate will not recover easily." Claire nodded, her demeanor calm, as if the success was expected. "They won't, not if we act on this intelligence immediately. Their network is compromised." The general studied her closely, finally allowing a faint smile. "You've proven yourself again, Donovan. The recruits, the base, they've all seen a glimpse of what Black Talon can do. But no one outside this office will ever truly understand." "That's how it should be," Claire replied. "Recognition is unnecessary. Impact is everything. Lives saved, threats neutralized, that's the measure of success." The general exhaled, his respect for her unwavering. "Few can execute what you've done tonight. Even fewer would survive the operation intact. You are a legend." Claire didn't respond immediately. She removed her gloves, carefully cleaned and checked her rifle, preparing it for storage. Every detail mattered. Lethal efficiency, patient precision, controlled execution. Black Talon was not defined by reputation, but by results. As dawn broke over Fort Benning, Claire reflected briefly on the mission. Vulture's Gate had been neutralized, their plans disrupted, and critical intelligence secured. The world outside remained unaware of the silent force that had dismantled a lethal organization in the dead of night. Recruits would whisper about the impossible shots on the training range, about the calm logistics officer who had become a ghost in the battlefield. They would speculate, awestruck, trying to comprehend skill that transcended their experience. But Claire Donovan, Black Talon, did not need their understanding. She needed results. The mission concluded, yet her work continued. The intelligence would guide future operations, prevent attacks, and protect lives. Black Talon had returned, executed flawlessly, and vanished into the shadows, as she always did. The general observed her quietly, recognizing the weight of what had occurred. He had trained, commanded, and led soldiers into combat, yet witnessing Claire in action reminded him that legends existed beyond ordinary comprehension. Precision, patience, and lethal skill, these were the hallmarks of Black Talon. Claire checked her rifle one last time before storing it in its secure case. The base remained silent, unaware of the predator who had moved unseen among enemies, dismantling a network with surgical efficiency. She had completed the mission with the exacting precision for which she was known. And as she left the armory, moving through the quiet corridors of Fort Benning, she knew that this was not the end. Threats would arise, missions would come, and once again, Black Talon would be called upon. But tonight, the legend had executed the final strike, leaving a trail of silence, precision, and results that no one outside the shadows could fully comprehend. Outside, the first light of morning painted the base in gold. Claire Donovan walked through the quiet streets, her presence calm and unassuming. The rifle rested in its case, the intelligence secured, and the threat neutralized. Black Talon had returned, executed flawlessly, and vanished as silently as she had appeared, leaving only the certainty that precision, patience, and lethal skill had once again triumphed. For the recruits, the instructors, and the base, she remained an enigma. A woman who had been mocked, underestimated, and dismissed, now a silent legend whose actions would resonate long after the night's mission ended. Claire Donovan, Black Talon, had delivered the final strike, and nothing would ever be the same again.